So I'm going to be brief here because in the interest of time, we don't have a lot here. I'm just going to briefly present to you the results of a survey performed with low-income populations in the Portland, Maine transportation region. The goal of the project was to increase access through public transportation systems based on the first-hand documented needs of low-income populations in the Portland, Maine metro area. You know, Sam mentioned at the beginning the need to sort of look at how we want to hone those and distribute those resources, particularly if we're looking at developing a TIF, how we would want to distribute that. So I'm just going to breeze through this. I performed the survey was done with around 300 surveys were distributed through tenant council meetings, through shelters, through mailings, through Avesta, Portland Housing Authority. There's about a 43% return rate on that, which is pretty good. This graphic right here just shows I asked a series of closed-ended questions on elements thought to be important for public transportation. Elements like access for the physically disadvantaged, frequent buses, complete and cleared sidewalks, services in a language other than English, shelter at bus stops, safe and well-marked places to cross the street on foot, parking available near bus stops, and bicycle lanes. And I just want to highlight here in this graph something that pops out here is it is as identified by the NE populations. It was primarily those physical infrastructure elements with complete and cleared sidewalks, shelter at bus stops, and safe and well-marked places to cross the streets on foot, making up almost 75% of what respondents thought needed to change. So that's an important element to look at as we develop strategies, particularly with the TIF. I then performed a geographic analysis with survey data. This is the MPO that Carl mentioned before. I wanted to hone down on what were the focus areas with which to develop that strategy, and what were the particular actions with which we could address those focus areas. And so this right here, these are the origins and destinations that respondents gave as important, or destinations that they've been to in the last week. Origins are blue and destinations are green. I do reference them on the map here. I then mapped the distribution of poverty. The darker blocks are high poverty blocks, the lighter blocks are lower poverty blocks. There is some missing data in Scarborough. This is from the American Community Survey from 2011. And then again, because we're talking about transit here, these are the transit lines. This includes South Portland, public transportation, metro, and also shuttle buses. I drew, based on respondents' feedback about the maximum distance they'd be willing to travel to a destination or to a bus stop. I made a 400-meter service area based on the road networks. That's the area in pink there you see shaded, and I overlaid the origins and destinations. As you can see, they do tend to line up a lot with the service areas. However, there are some notable exceptions, and this sort of started to highlight the important relationship that there was between access to the public transportation, poverty distributions, and the location services. So then I wanted to create an accessibility index, essentially, that could index accessibility by census block in order to understand where the focus areas were and how we could address them. This was a study, Susan Zielinski et al. In 2007, with the Sustainable Mobility and Accessibility Research and Transformation Project at the University of Michigan. They were looking for a series of indicators for accessibility based on the 30 largest metropolitan regions in the country. They came up with these three as the most accurate: mobility, proximity, and connectivity. These were used for my study to measure data from the surveys to try to develop an index for accessibility for those census blocks within the study area. This graphic here just basically gives you an idea of how that index was created. Again, I took the high poverty census block shown in the map above, the origins and destinations that were found from the surveys. They were fed through the three indicators for connectivity, mobility, and proximity, which measured the survey data. And that created an accessibility cost per census block, ultimately yielding a poverty access comparison and finding the transportation equity priorities, those places that needed the most transportation equity work and the strategies with which to address them. And that should be about all you need to know to understand the graphic that I'm about to show you. So this was, again, going in here, as we zoom in here to the city, the region of Portland, the Portland MPO, see that, again, census blocks are, all these polygons are census blocks, and they are shaded from light to dark according to poverty, like the previous graphic. Lighter blocks have lower poverty or less living under poverty, and darker blocks have higher. poverty. As you can see here, the downtown here, the peninsula, has the highest polygons. The polygon's height is determined by the accessibility, which is measured by those three indicators I described above. As you can see here, there's the highest access in the peninsula, which makes sense because it has the most number of routes running congruent and the most bicycle and walking paths, as well as the density of services. However, as we zoom in closer on the model, it becomes apparent that there is a good deal of discrepancy in access between census blocks within regions, and even census blocks that are next to each other and have the same poverty level, according to the indicators used. As we move around to Bayside, East Bayside, we can start to see how this model tells the story that came up a lot in the interviews and outreach process. Again and again, Bayside and East Bayside were cited as having limited access due to high-speed roadways like Marginal Way and Franklin Arterial, and due to limited bus access stops, particularly in the East Bayside region. And if you were to click on one of these census blocks, you can actually go through the attribute table and look at the three different indicators: proximity, mobility, and connectivity, and see how they relate to the census blocks around them, so you can start to understand how strategies may be best applied. Another focus area would be the Riverside Outer Forest region, which again you see dark blocks indicating high poverty and then much lower indicating low accessibility. And then finally,